All right, everyone, welcome back to the We Shall Not Sleep podcast. I hope you're doing well on this wonderful Wednesday, halfway through the week here. And yeah, we are managing to survive. I think I found out my limitations. I found my limitations in this last week, but man, that was it's been crazy. We got a holiday weekend upcoming here in the United States, so for those hard workers here stateside, I wish and hope you guys, wherever you're going to be traveling this weekend with family, whatever you're going to be doing, that you remain safe and you remain secure. So, by the way, I just want to let you know, preface again, we can be found on YouTube as well as SoundCloud where we're hosted, but anywhere you get your podcast, you can find us. You can find We Shall Not Sleep. So, I would like to just plug that. If you have any questions, comments, feedback, suggestions for guests in the future, you can email us at WSNSpodcast@gmail.com. Alrighty, so I would like to talk to you about something that I am so passionate about, and it's actually quite relevant to my life right now because I'm going through this in one of my graduate classes for my MDiv. And that is Historic Christian Thought is the name of the class with my favorite professor, Dr. Athanasius, friend of the show, was on here a couple years ago. And one of the things that I really adored and loved about his approach when I had him in undergraduate, my undergraduate courses, is that he made history come alive. He made history really just... He'd have these like personal anecdotes and little quips that would connect it. Sometimes they'd be a little anachronistic, but that was by design. And it really made it relevant. And what I have been doing along with this home church gathering that I have been partaking in with some really good friends and my parents, or also something that I'm seeing is this studying and this real appreciation for the context behind the setting in which these original pieces of Scripture were written. Putting ourselves in the shoes of the original recipients is such a powerful thing. I just love it. And what we've been going through in my class is, again, the first early part, in this first section of our course, the early parts of the early church, and really the apostolic age leading up to like the First Council of Nicaea, Council of Constantinople, to name a few events in 325 and 381, respectively. But we were going back over a lot of these men and women both who contributed so much to the faith. Then there's a lot of cases when you get to the later part of the second century, you're finally getting maybe second-generation Christians, finally. You look at somebody like Origen, for example, and where you're seeing the faith continue past the apostles. Again, John, the last disciple to die, roughly right at the end of the first century. And what happens now? Now you have everyone who's died off who actually walked with and met the resurrected Jesus, right? Now you have their disciples who walked with them, who may not have seen it, but they believed, they were able to talk to many eyewitnesses. They might be still around. But then as you go, you're eventually going to get like the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon type of thing, where you're eventually going to get to a point where you're no longer knowing anyone who met Jesus or who had a family member who passed down these stories. You're finding people that believe the way. Their parents were Christians. They were converted to the faith because of these wonderful apologists and defenders that upheld the tradition and the teachings, and they were also willing to die for it. They were willing to be martyred for the sake of the gospel, something that's unheard of. All you have to do is recant, just say, hey, just stop doing this, hand over the copy of the Gospel of Luke that you have, and you'll be fine. And yet these Christians weren't. They were not doing this. And you look at somebody like early church father Tertullian, who was from Carthage in North Africa, travels to Rome. He's a lawyer, and he's trained to become a lawyer, and has just moved beyond reason to why these Christians were having such conviction and courage in the face of the arena. And I find it to be fascinating is that these were some of the pillars of the faith in those early years. Well, eventually, I just want to talk a little bit about Saint Athanasius. He's born right in the. It's hard to pinpoint exactly. A lot of scholars put it at 303, right in the middle of the persecution, the back-to-back persecution of the emperors, the Great Persecution, as referred to by Diocletian and Maximin. And they are instituting the widest spreading Christian persecution in human history. And a lot of the people that Athanasius went to school with, they end up dying. He ends up seeing a lot of this happen around him. He goes on to live a full life, but this all happens around him, and yet he exists. He exists in an era where Christianity is starting to get some pressure, because in 313, so when he's a preteen, Constantine comes to power, and he issues the Edict of Milan, and it legalizes Christianity. After the years of persecution, Christianity is now legalized. And Constantine supposedly, converts to Christianity. His goal, he wants to unite the empire. He wants to settle these disputes, because in this world, the gentleman by the name of Arius develops a theory and a teaching that Jesus was not fully God. It's very heretical. It's a heretical teaching. It's just as heretical as it was back then as it is today. But there's a reason why we know it's heretical. If you were to meet someone on the street and you were to hear them say, I'm a Christian, but I don't believe Jesus was fully God, most Christians, unless that are maybe not a day old in Christianity as far as their Christian age, they would recognize that as a false statement. That's a false equivalency. You can't be a Christian and say that Jesus wasn't God, right? Like that's not what we believe. Well, there's a reason why we have that a view on the Son, the second member of the Trinity. There's a reason why. And Athanasius, who is present at the Council of Nicaea in 325, called by Constantine to resolve this issue. What do all the bishops, what do the men and the women and all the people who've contributed to the faith, not that there was women at the council, sorry ladies, but what do you think? And they all condemn Arius, they burn his teachings, and they exile him. And Athanasius then goes on for the next 4 decades to continuously write against Arianism, because Arius was brought back from exile. Athanasius was sent into exile. It's a whole thing that goes back and forth. Well, he dedicates his entire life to the church as a celibate human being, writing on the defense of Jesus. One of his most famous work, On the Incarnation, something you can find out there, is incredible. He writes it at 20 years of age. And it's not too heady. It's not like Augustine, for example. Oh, it's hard. And Origen is hard too. It's not that difficult. C.S. Lewis has an amazing introduction to the translation of On the Incarnation that you can find out there. It's amazing what C.S. Lewis points out about him. But this gentleman, for so long, I think he's among the most. He's definitely my favorite person in church history. That's not somebody who's like in the Bible. Like, you want to talk about Christianity, Christian history outside of the Bible, he's got to be my favorite because of what he contributed to the faith, holding true and leading the charge about the divinity of Jesus. And where are we today without those type of people that sacrifice so much, dedicated their whole lives to upholding the truth of these claims? Because we truly believe, Jesus says, I and the Father are one. He was the promised Messiah. And to say that there was a time when he was not, so therefore Jesus was created, well, yes, the humanity was. The human, yes, was born from the virgin, of course, but the idea that his essence, his ousia, is we would say is a famous word, the idea that Jesus, like as God, he just didn't exist and it was created by the Father. It's like, man, that's not what Christianity teaches. The Father, the Son, Holy Spirit were already existing in a living and loving relationship prior to creation. They were already fulfilled in amongst themselves. And this is language that I'm saying today was given to us because you had these defenders of the faith who stood up against not just persecution, but also false teachings in the midst of persecution. And then once Christianity is legalized, then there are more heresies that pop up that we just have to deal with. And I tell you, I just have so much admiration for these guys and these ladies that raised people with right values. And it's just a shame that we don't get to talk about this in church, because sometimes it becomes maybe for some, they think it's too academic, but I believe it's so important, because the Bible doesn't come out and spell out the Trinity. We've had to develop language around it, how we understand it. And I think that's just the working out of our salvation with fear and trembling. I think that's part of that process. So these are all some things I would like you to think about. You can go read about these folks, Athanasius, and on the incarnation, something you can just research. The 4th century, there's so much to be said about, especially here in the West, of what does it look like to have the interaction between the church and the state, and what point is too far if you can get to a certain limit. Constantine himself, what he did, these councils where they came together to write creeds that we still recite in certain iterations to this very day, as a mutual affirmation, understanding that this is what it means as a doctrinal statement to be a Christian. We believe such things. That's where creed or credo comes from the Latin, is I believe. All this is so relevant for us, and it can be told in ways that are approachable, that are not over one's head, that are engaging, and that are utterly fascinating. And maybe it takes good teachers like the ones I have had. And so I hope this has been worth your time. Hope that maybe just urges you into the fact that there are some great people in history out there in the church that have shaped it now for the last 1,700 years for the better. So thank you. Let this be my appreciation post for Saint Athanasius. Can't wait to meet that guy in heaven someday. Thank you all so much for your time. May God bless you, and may God keep you.